The humid Georgia air hung heavy, even as the sun began its lazy descent. I, Kyle Thomas, leaned back in my porch swing, enjoying the quiet evening. My wife, Sarah, was inside, humming some tune as she prepared dinner. We'd moved into this suburban paradise hoping for peace and tranquility, a respite from the hectic life I led as an FBI agent. Irony, it seemed, had other plans. For weeks, whispers had circulated within the bureau about a band of imposters, masquerading as HOA enforcers, preying on unsuspecting residents. They'd invent outlandish violations, demand exorbitant fines, and even resort to staged arrests to extort money. We dismissed the stories as isolated incidents, the work of opportunistic criminals. But lately, the frequency had increased, the boldness escalating. I'd even started carrying my Glock 19 off-duty, a habit I thought I'd left behind in the city. A premonition, perhaps. Dinner was almost ready, and then there was a knock on the door. I watched as Sarah, wiping her hands on her apron, opened the door. I could hear her greeting, polite and cautious, and then the clipped, authoritative voices of two women. I couldn't make out the words, but I could feel the shift in Sarah's demeanor. She wasn't as calm as she usually was, and started sweating. My gut clenched. I rose from the swing, my senses on high alert. I saw two figures, women, standing on our porch. They were dressed in uniforms that resembled official law enforcement, navy blue with shiny badges and patches that looked vaguely official. The material of the uniforms looked cheap though, and the badges didn't seem quite right. They were both blonde, young, and radiated an unsettling confidence. It was all too familiar, too staged. I knew right then, this wasn't legitimate. I stepped through the doorway. The women turned their attention to me, their expressions hardening. "Kyle Thomas?" one of them asked, her voice sharp, accusatory. "We're here regarding multiple HOA violations. Unapproved landscaping, excessive noise complaints, and, most recently, failure to adhere to the mandated holiday light display schedule. The total fine amounts to $10,000. $10,000? For holiday lights? It was absurd. My blood began to boil, but I forced myself to remain calm. "I think you have the wrong house," I said, keeping my voice even. "We've followed all the regulations. Show me the documentation." The women exchanged a look, a flicker of annoyance crossing their faces. "Documentation will be provided upon payment," the other woman said, her tone dismissive. "Until the fine is paid, you are both in violation and subject to arrest." I chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Arrest? For an HOA violation? You're kidding, right?" I knew this was escalating quickly, and I needed to control the situation. I surreptitiously reached for my phone, keeping it concealed in my pocket, my thumb hovering over the speed dial for my contact at the bureau. I needed backup, and I needed it now. "This is harassment," I stated firmly. "I demand to see proper identification and a warrant. And I want to speak to your supervisor." The women seemed unfazed. The first one stepped closer, invading my personal space. "We are authorized to enforce HOA regulations," she said, her voice laced with menace. "Your compliance will make things easier. Otherwise, we will be forced to take you into custody." My wife, Sarah, looked at me with wide, frightened eyes. She didn't understand what was happening, why these women were threatening us. I could see the panic rising in her. That's when I began to realize, the plan was to scare us. "Don't worry, sweetheart," I said to Sarah, offering her a reassuring smile. "These ladies are just confused." I turned my attention back to the fake officers. "Look, I'm not paying any bogus fine. I know my rights. You need to leave my property immediately." I hoped my calm demeanor would be enough to deter them, but I knew, deep down, they wouldn't back down so easily. They had come too far. The second woman then took hold of Sarah's arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Your wife is obstructing justice, she said, her voice cold and devoid of emotion. She is now under arrest. My blood ran cold. This was going too far. I grabbed the woman's arm, trying to pry her hand off Sarah. Get your hands off her. I shouted, my voice finally betraying my anger. You have no right. The first woman then stepped in, pulling out what looked like a taser. Stand down, sir, she warned, her finger hovering over the trigger. Or you will be tossed. The situation was spiraling out of control. I knew if I attempted to physically fight them, things would only get worse. I needed to buy time, to stall until my backup arrived. I took a step back, raising my hands in a gesture of surrender. Okay, I said, trying to sound placating. Just calm down. Let's talk about this. Inside though, I finally managed to dial the number, praying someone would answer quickly. I heard a voice on the other end, Agent Thompson speaking, what's your emergency? I lowered my voice and whispered, this is Agent Thomas, badge number 478. I need immediate assistance at my residence. Possible fake law enforcement attempting extortion. They are holding my wife against her will. Please expedite a SWAT team immediately, this is the real deal. I didn't dare say it loud enough for them to hear, I knew they were listening closely. Even using code I was taking a big risk, but this was all I could do. The woman holding Sarah's arm didn't release her grip. She started dragging her wife off of the porch. We're not here to talk, she said, her eyes hard. We're here to enforce the law. Or at least, their twisted version of it. Where are you taking her? I demanded, my voice rising again. I have the right to know. The first woman smirked, a cruel, unsettling expression. To the HOA detention center, she said mockingly. Where she'll be held until you pay the fine. They didn't even try to make it sound legit. I watched in horror as they dragged Sarah towards a dark SUV parked at the curb, a vehicle that definitely didn't look like any police cruiser I'd ever seen. My heart pounded in my chest. I had to do something. I couldn't let them take her. I lunged forward, trying to block their path. You're not taking her anywhere. I shouted, my patience finally snapping. But the women were too quick. The first one sidestepped my lunge, and the other shoved Sarah into the back of the SUV. They slammed the door shut, the sound echoing in the quiet neighborhood. I wanted to go after them, but I knew I couldn't. I had to wait for backup. One wrong move, and I was worried what these people were capable of. I stood on my porch, paralyzed with anger and fear, as the SUV screeched away, leaving me standing alone in the fading light. The seconds stretched into an eternity. I stood frozen on my porch, the image of Sarah's terrified face burned into my mind. The fake officers had taken her, and I felt helpless, a failure as a husband and as an agent. I knew I had to keep it together, that panicking wouldn't help Sarah. I paced back and forth, my mind racing, trying to anticipate the next move. Where would they take her? What would they do to her? I fought back the urge to jump in my car and give chase, knowing it would be a reckless, impulsive act that could jeopardize everything. I had to trust that the Bureau would arrive soon, that they would handle this professionally and efficiently. But the waiting was excruciating. I kept my eyes glued to the street, scanning for any sign of the approaching SWAT team. Every passing car, every distant siren, sent a jolt of hope through me, only to be dashed a moment later. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, sharpening my senses, making me hyper-aware of every detail. The chirping of crickets, the rustling of leaves, the distant barking of a dog, everything seemed amplified, distorted by my anxiety. I thought about Sarah, about her kindness, her strength, her unwavering support. We didn't deserve this, none of us did. We just wanted to live a normal life, away from the chaos and violence. I glanced at my watch. 5 minutes had passed since I made the call. 5 agonizing minutes. I knew that in emergency situations, every second counted. I began to doubt my decision to wait, to trust the system. Maybe I should have gone after them, consequences be damned. At least then I would be doing something, anything, to get her back. But then, in the distance, I heard it. A faint wail of sirens, growing louder with each passing moment. Hope surged through me, a powerful wave washing away the despair. They were coming. Finally, they were coming. The sound grew closer, a symphony of hope and justice. Then, I saw them. A convoy of black SUVs, tires squealing as they approached my house, lights flashing, sirens blaring. The SWAT team had arrived. They screeched to a halt in front of my house, the armed agents spilling out, moving with precision and purpose. They fanned out around the property, securing the perimeter, their weapons drawn. I felt a surge of relief, a weight lifting off my shoulders. I watched as one of the agents approached me, his face grim, but reassuring. "Agent Thomas," he asked, his eyes scanning me quickly. "We're here to assist. Can you give us a description of the suspects and the vehicle?" I rattled off the details, painting a vivid picture of the fake officers, their uniforms, and the dark SUV. The agent nodded, relaying the information to his team. "We'll find them, Agent Thomas," he said, his voice firm. "We'll get your wife back." I watched as they quickly located the direction the SUV went and started driving that direction. It was crazy to watch the whole FBI SWAT team roll out. I felt that sense of relief slowly begin to wash over all of my fear and adrenaline. As the SWAT team prepared to move out, 2 more black SUVs screeched to a halt behind them. A group of agents in plain clothes emerged, their faces serious. One of them approached me, flashing his badge. "Agent Miller, Internal Affairs," he said. "We're here to investigate the circumstances surrounding this incident. Can you tell us everything that happened?" I recounted the events of the evening, from the moment the fake officers arrived at my door to the abduction of my wife. I explained my suspicions about the HOA scam, the rumors I'd heard within the bureau, and my decision to call for backup. Agent Miller listened intently, taking notes, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "Thank you, Agent Thomas," he said. "We'll get to the bottom of this." I knew that internal affairs being involved meant things were serious, that this wasn't just a random act of criminality. This was a coordinated operation. As the agents scattered, a wave of exhaustion crashed over me. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me feeling drained and vulnerable. I sat down heavily on the porch swing. I suddenly felt the weight of what had happened that evening. My wife was gone, taken by these fake officers from my front porch, and I was helpless to stop it. I knew I had to stay strong, both for her and for myself. I couldn't let these criminals win. The sky was now dark, stars slowly beginning to appear. The world around me seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for the outcome. Then, after what felt like an eternity but was probably only 20 minutes, I heard the familiar sound of sirens approaching. This time, however, they were different. They were closer, more urgent. The SWAT team was returning. The black SUVs roared back onto my street, screeching to a halt in front of my house. The agents poured out, their faces grim, but there was something else in their eyes, triumph. In the back of one of the SUVs, I saw her. Sarah. I knew she was safe. I leaped off the swing and ran towards the vehicle, my heart pounding with relief. As they opened the door, Sarah stumbled out, her face tear-streaked. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close, burying my face in her hair. "You're okay," I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. "You're safe now." The agents then pulled the 2 fake officers from another vehicle. They were handcuffed, their faces pale and frightened. The smug confidence they had displayed earlier was gone, replaced by a mask of terror. They were holed up in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, one of the agents explained. "We found evidence of a sophisticated extortion scheme, complete with fake uniforms, badges, and documentation." As they were led away, one of the women locked eyes with me, her expression filled with hatred. But I didn't care. I had my wife back. Justice had been served. As I held Sarah close, I thought about the events of the evening, the fear, the anger, the helplessness. But I also felt a sense of gratitude, for the Bureau, for the SWAT team, and for the strength of our love. We would get through this, together.